everybody, thanks for being with us today. I'm Ruthan Freese. I'm an engineer here at Spreedly, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about a reorganization we did this January and some ensuing process changes we got to do. So the idea for this reorganization was, among other things, to better integrate our engineering with our product team. As you might imagine, this took a lot of time and effort deciding how this should be done, who should end up where. I'm holding the clicker backwards. There we go. So as part of this reorganization, I moved from the customer experience team to the Connect squad. In general terms, teams' responsibilities as opposed to squads' responsibilities centered on pieces of our architecture, whereas squads' responsibilities are focused on addressing specific customer concerns. And we'll get into what these respective groups did and do as we go. Our new squads have had the opportunity to experiment with some new tools and workflows to figure out what works best for each squad's particular needs. And one thing we did that I found particularly interesting was that I, transitioning from the team to the squad, got to go from sprint-based planning to Kanban-based work and back to sprint-based planning. We had some interesting things to figure out along the way, as you might imagine, and I'm going to tell you about what some of those were. So customer experience was doing a 3+1 week sprint cycle. So that was 3 weeks of planned sprint work, followed by a week dedicated to things like refactoring or other tech debt settlement, research tasks that came up over the course of the sprint, non-urgent app maintenance like version audits, and looking to see if we had any email we actually cared to read. Most of customer experience's work was focused on delivery of fairly substantial new features, like the new and improved dashboard that Jared showed you all just a little bit ago. And the 3-week cycle was really good for that. It accommodated those bigger tasks without having to chop them up too much. Customer experience also had a running queue of tasks collectively referred to as L3, which was short for level 3 support. And we'd have a point person for L3 who would rotate on a weekly basis. Since L3 for customer experience was mostly running imports and exports of payment methods, and those are tasks that have a lot of small steps and require a fairly quick turnaround and also involve a somewhat variable amount of work. And these could come in kind of at any rate and would take anywhere from minutes to days. And sort of as a result of all of that, the person who was on point for L3 for that week wouldn't plan to take sprint tasks that required a lot of time or deep focus. And the Connect squad was the obvious heir to the endpoints team, sort of in terms of what our day-to-day work looked like. And the work of the endpoints team was a little more piecemeal. It involved gateway implementations and new gateway features, adding receivers, updating external documentation, things like that. Endpoints had been using a Kanban system, and Connect inherited that system using what I think of as kind of a buoyant FIFO, first in, first out. An incoming request could be prioritized anywhere in the ready column, and a developer who finished their previous task would pick the first card at the top of the ready column and start working on that. But part of the point of the squad reorganization was to do more feature-level work and sort of get out of that hamster wheel of, like, we don't know what's coming, but we have to do it already. And also, since an incoming task can go anywhere, this doesn't have great transparency for stakeholders, because it's like, you're at the top of the column now, but will you still be tomorrow when the next developer comes to take a new task? Who knows? So Connect has decided, for now, to start working on a 2-week sprint cycle. Now, sprints obviously aren't a drop-in replacement for Kanban. We've had, as I mentioned, a few interesting problems to solve. And we have, I think, come up with a few interesting solutions. One of them is that we do still have some requests come in that can't wait for as long as 2 weeks to get prioritized and worked into a sprint. And one of the ways we handle that is that in addition to having a general backlog that we pull work from into sprints, we also have what's called the maintenance backlog. And tasks that go into the maintenance backlog are restricted to things that have a very well-defined problem space We know they won't take long. We know that we can do them pretty quickly. And that's helpful also for us as developers, because sometimes if you've been heads down on something for a while, it's good to be able to come up, get a quick win, feel like you really contributed. One other thing that we needed to address was sort of a who's answering the phones question. On endpoints, this was the job of the octopus, who used their many arms to field those quick tasks, kind of like the L3 person did on customer experience. Connect has recently decided to reinstate the octopus role to be the designated first point of contact for internal requests, whether those are for information, support help, or whatever. We also had some work to do around figuring out how timing was going to work out. One interesting one that we came across pretty early on was how to triage requests. We often would have requests come in that would say, can you add this feature to this gateway? To which the answer is, maybe. And the way we decided to deal with that was to break that into two separate tasks. We would have both an investigate task and then like an actually do it task. And if it worked out for sprint planning, we could pull both of those tasks into the same sprint, with the assumption being that once we figured out if we could do it, we would go ahead and do it. The upshot of that is that if we figured out we couldn't do it, what would the person who was going to do that end up doing? And the answer is that it's pretty easy to go get things out of the maintenance backlog to keep us entertained. And the other thing that that's been really helpful for is that we estimate our tasks before we start them. But, I mean, those are, after all, estimates. And it helps us have some flexibility because, you know, obviously there are some non-trivial vagaries of time that come along with estimation because they are estimates and not promises. But as it all works out, no one has to be bored. Oh, another octopus. So, I really like thinking about this process stuff. This has been a lot of fun for me to be involved in. And I've really enjoyed being a part of continuing to refine our processes to best serve all of our stakeholders, both internal and external. If you all would like to talk more about this or get on my case for using the word sprint loosely, you're welcome to come find me afterward. And enjoy the rest of your conference.